Hello. I think you're muted.
Hey, Pat.
Hey.
I sure was. I have a stuffy nose, so I was
Oh
blowing my nose
no.
in between segments, and I hopefully I muted during that. I realized, like, between my mics and things, I was like, I don't know, but it's good to see you. I've been seeing you on and off, but we have actually not been on the same screen yet. Like, we've been
Absolutely.
kind of flipping in and out. Now we get to almost close out, not completely close out, because I know Gia and Candace will be doing the wellness giveaway and then. So all of you
Oh,
still
nice.
around, make sure to stick around for the giveaway after Pat and I are done. But I'm so excited to talk about our topic because, like you mentioned, it is leadership and it's supporting leaders in today's environment. We're
Mm.
gonna probably keep the session to about 30 minutes, although this is something that we could talk about, I think, for hours on end. But for those of you who have hung out with us for the entire day today, we're so glad that you're still here. We're so glad to share this time with you. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to share my screen now. Let me see. I'm no stranger to sharing screens on StreamYard, but I'm also no stranger to weird things happening with technology. So you'll be my wingman
Let's
to tell
see.
me if I can do this okay. So let's say share screen. Okay, it's giving me some tips. All right.
By the
Chrome
way,
tab.
you talk about me being your wingman. I saw Top Gun 2 yesterday. I recommend. Two thumbs up. It's really good. It's really good.
You, it's really funny because I think I saw that on your Instagram. And funny enough,
Mhm.
Martine went 2 days ago when he was on
Really?
a
Like,
business trip and he's like, I don't know if you're gonna go with me, so I'm just gonna go on my own because his dad is a pilot. And he's like, I
oh
know this movie
wow.
by heart from childhood, so I have to go check it out.
Likewise.
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah.
I can imagine. I might say I don't remember like now last time I've been in a theater. I gotta go back. But thumbs up, you really
Really
enjoyed it?
good. Yeah, especially if you like the first one. They found a way to basically make the OG original gangster fans happy, and then bring in a wider audience. They did a good job.
I love it. Well, somehow I feel like with Martine, and while Mateo's still little, 3.5, he probably won't get it. But somehow I feel like this will be a big part of my life in the future. So if I
Probably.
don't catch it in the theaters, I have a feeling it'll be kind of like maybe the next iteration of Encanto, which we've seen probably at
Oh.
least 100 times thanks to
Uh-huh.
Mateo. It's brilliant. It's brilliant, but I definitely know it by heart and all about Bruno and everybody else. So I'm glad
Love
you
it.
enjoyed
Hmm.
it. All right, so let me see if I click. Hold on. There we are.
You got
Are we
it.
doing this?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It's
I
happening.
think I'll have to flip to the other one to move my slides along. Hold on one. Oh, that's not it. This one. Am I moving? Am I moving?
Yeah,
Yes.
you are. You are.
Okay. Beautiful. Okay, so I'll get us started. Like Crystal was mentioning, we'll talk a little bit about leadership and then Pat's going to show you some of what we've been up to from a technology standpoint in actually, walking our talk and supporting leaders and helping them grow and develop. So, um, I've talked a lot. I feel like I sometimes I'm like a record, but I feel so passionately about it around what's been going on during the pandemic. And I think that it's been just such an incredible time for people, an incredible time for reflection, incredible time for change. It's been really hard and challenging in many ways. It's been good in other ways. It's just this big mix of things. Now, as an organizational psychologist, I've also been called to speak on different panels, join different groups, and talk about mental health and well being. And there's something that really jumped out at me in a session that I was in last year where kind of the unanimous voice was that managers are really responsible for helping employees with their mental health and the different challenges. And I thought, whew, in theory, I couldn't agree with that more. In practice, are we actually helping managers and are we actually providing them the support, the education, the skills that they need to fill that huge and incredibly important role? And
Mhm.
I thought as somebody, I'm an organizational psychologist, as I mentioned that, and I'm very transparent. I share very often with people about how I'm feeling. I try to create a space for people to be very open and oftentimes they are, which is brilliant. But over time, I've certainly found myself in situations where I'm like, wow, I don't know how to help. And I don't know what the right answer is here. And maybe it's not always about the answer, but I certainly felt like I need to find a way to be better equipped. And so this is a recent Harvard Business Review article that says managers can do it all. And it very much talks about these, changing priorities of what managers and leaders are expected to do, and how do we handle that? How do we prioritize? What is the role of the manager? And if it's going to be even bigger, which in some ways it could be beautiful, how can we make sure that they're successful? And so another McKinsey study that was quoted in that said that having good relationships with their managers is the top factor in employees' job satisfaction, top factor, which in turn is the second most important determinant of their overall well-being. So no pressure. We've heard probably over the last decade or more that people don't leave bad companies, they leave bad managers. But now we're
Hmm.
upping the stakes to say
Yeah.
not only are they going to leave, but if they're there, it's actually going to have impact and satisfaction in their well-being. And well-being is, one of the most important factors that we talk about. I was just at the Josh Bersin Irresistible conference 2 weeks ago in LA, and it was incredible to me how many HR leaders, how many CHROs talked about that being a priority in their organization. It was just absolutely huge. And so again, now we're seeing the huge role the managers play on that. And again, brilliant if we as organizations can find the right way to support them. Are we finding the right way to support them? Well, another study, because I'm a researcher and I love data, and every one of my opinions I want to back up with facts, is that there was actually a recent study by Gartner where they asked HR leaders from companies how their managers were doing, and 68% reported that they're overwhelmed. So are we in the place that this, additional expectation of managers, this, what is it the quote from Batman, like, or no, Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. But how do we make sure that people are willing to step up to that challenge? And I think for most people that I've talked with, it's not, again, necessarily that they don't want their role, but they're just questioning, how do I do this effectively? And then I think the final article that I'll share, maybe I'm wrong, is, what some of the research, like what's emerging that we're looking for in leaders. And so one,
Hmm.
that's been most common is, push. So leaders, managers are expected to drive results. And so most of us are given a specific target, given specific expectations, and that's what we drive towards. And that's what we communicate to our teams. And we give them the knowledge and the skills to, hit those milestones and hit those targets. But then comes in inspiring and motivating others. And I don't know about you. I've been in the professional world for a couple of decades now, and so I've worked for a number of different leaders. I've met a number of different leaders, and it's not always a no-brainer that a person can effectively do both. It's not a no-brainer that somebody is going to be so incredibly business-oriented and task-driven and have this mindset of this is exactly what we need to do to make our business succeed and be able to make tough choices, but in the other end is going to be really empathetic and motivational and a nurture and like, rah, rah, let's go. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying probably more often than not, one of these needs to be developed for them to really both be competitive and up to par. And so, how are we effectively doing that, right? And,
Hmm.
another thing to think about is the way that our business environment is changing. And so, Pat and I are sitting here, finally sharing a screen. We met each other for the first time a couple of weeks ago in California on a business trip, but that was, we've been working together for a couple of months before that happened. We have a lot of our team members all around the world who we've not met yet. And so how do you transcend that digitally? How do you transcend that maybe you don't see everybody every day? Or let me correct that. You you most definitely won't see everybody in your team every day unless you really have group meetings, every morning. And maybe that's not that likely. And so, how do you keep that channel of communication? How do you keep that spirit? How do you really keep that passion? I think it's something that we're going to continue to learn about and it's going to continue to evolve. But as soon as we learn best practices, a big part of that is going to be okay, now we know what works in today's environment. How do we get that knowledge to everybody else? And so we did some research as well on what makes a great leader, right? So we're talking about pushing, we're talking about pulling, around motivation, around all of these different things. And based on all of our research, we came up with a number of competencies. Now, one thing I want to be very clear about is that depending on your organization and your culture, what makes a successful leader can be very different. So I don't want anybody to, be sitting there hearing me say, this is it, this is the secret recipe. And if every one of your leaders in the organization is really good at these competencies, like the sky's the limit. It's not necessarily the case. One thing is that our belief is that a person will be a truly, truly incredible leader if they understand what their strengths are and if they really leverage those. That's what's going to really help them stand apart, make an impact on their team, and make an impact on their organization. They need to be aware of the areas that they're not strong in and make a very conscientious decision around, is it this something that's holding me back? Or is it something that I'm not really that great at, but I can surround myself with people that are going to be just exceptional at it, and
Mhm.
it's not going to impact my performance or my relationships. Now, we work with a lot of brilliant companies that have different models, they have different competencies again. There's different philosophies, there's different fits for the organization. This is what we believe today in this world, that we live in, can work for a lot of organizations. But one of the things with Question Pro is that we are a research organization. We do look to innovate, we do look to understand the market to really bring forward the thought leadership, but also at our core, we provide the technology to organizations that have done that work as well and found different models and found different theories to really empower them and say, if you work with organizations where there's a different kind of leadership model that resonates with them, we want to be the technology that brings that to life for you. And that's what Pat is going to be demoing in just a couple minutes. So, what does 360-degree feedback accomplish? So we talk about these competencies, and I mentioned that the world around us has changed. In many cases, the way we work with people has changed. And historically, it's always been quite challenging. Like you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, well, I believe I'm this, this, and this. You're a sample size of one. And then you have your peers and how you interact with them. They might have some different perceptions than you. Maybe there's some, agreement on what makes you really strong. Maybe there's some disagreement. How you interact with your team can oftentimes intentionally or very much unintentionally be different than how you communicate with your peers and how you communicate with your leader. So that 360 view is important because we do sometimes change our communication styles and sometimes it's warranted and sometimes we don't realize we're doing it. Maybe we're overly demanding of our team but really accommodating to our peers and we don't realize that. Now add this virtual world where some people are really skilled communicators digitally. Some people can really read cues. A lot of people can't. And so I might think that I'm doing a brilliant job with my team and I'm motivating everybody and I'm being inspirational, but maybe I'm not reaching everybody the same way because of the way I
Mhm.
communicate, because of the frequency of communication, maybe because of like cultural differences where some things work. And so having that input is really critical. So when it comes to 360, oftentimes the first step is really understanding what is expected of me. Whatever your competency model is in your organization, whatever you truly believe is going to make a successful leader for your organization, it provides clarity. And we believe if you're strong in these areas or you can compensate or work on others, you're going to be truly exceptional here. And then the second thing is how effectively am I delivering on these expectations? So, from the feedback of different people, not just me and my belief and how I think I'm projecting myself and how I think I'm running my business, you can really get a much better data driven understanding of those strengths and areas of opportunity. And then, how can I do better? For all of us, we're constantly trying to think about what's the next step. How can I make a greater impact? How can I be a better leader? How can I be a better manager? How can I drive my business to be more successful? So, all of that is about development. All of that is about creating a safe space where people can really exchange that information. And the person that gets it says, not only am I clear about what's expected of me now, and I understand perceptions of others, but I have this really great way of understanding what are some practical next steps that I can do to actually start to improve. And then later you can decide, do you want to have an executive coach? Do you want to take different classes? How can you take that to a different level? But you have this really robust data foundation for where to get started. And so I'll turn it over to Pat to give you some highlights of the platform. This is located on our website. The URL is at the bottom left hand. There are a lot of technologies out there. There really are, and every day there are more. And I think that's brilliant because many of us are out there, saying, how do we solve these challenges? How do we solve these really big challenges that are coming up and continue to evolve and they're different? We're really proud of what we built. And over the last year, we put significant development effort into building a more robust 360 because we believe in the importance of really, really outstanding leadership. And we want to be that partner to organizations to say, we have the technology that can really propel you. We can have the technology that can empower you, that can really transform your leaders. And these are just some of the differentiators that also Pat is going to touch on as he walks us through the platform. So, Pat, without further ado, let me see if I can stop sharing my screen and turn
Amazing.
it over to you.
Thank you. And I love how this is tying back into all the conversations that we've been having today. We're talking about bringing change and having this culture of change and being able to thrive in a context where everything's always changing. Making sure that we're equipping our leaders is really important. So this is a tool that kind of like ties it up here a little bit. It kind of like builds that bridge here. So let me just share my screen. Okay. Are you seeing my screen right now?
Almost, yes. Look
Okay.
at us.
Hey,
Screen
perfect.
sharing
Because
pro.
yesterday this was not working. So I'm glad that we ironed out all the kinks yesterday. So yes, and I don't know who's listening to this now or in the future, but I guess I can preface by saying that our tool is being used by employers, right? So employers, basically organizations, and they're just looking for like an out of the box experience, and also by consultants and executive coaches who kind of like, they love the technology and they want to bring their own model, they want to bring their own secret sauce, and our tool really allows to customize as much as needed here. So what we're seeing here are some of the competencies that Sanya, you've just mentioned now. So we've got everything from inclusive leadership to grit and resilience, all the way to impact and change management. You can see we have 8 here. And if I'm expanding here, we'll see the behaviors that are tied to each of those competencies, right? And so here we're going to see basically the scale of the answers. And one thing that I kind of like here is sometimes as a respondent myself, I'm not quite sure what the context is around a question. So I think it's really cool that we're allowing allowing basically the people building the survey to add a little bit of extra information if needed, so that we're making sure that we're measuring the right things and we're capturing the right data, because action plans and everything will be built based on what we're getting here. So the good thing here is when I talk about being able to adjust things and customize, so inside of a competency here, we can delete any question we have, or we can adjust them, or we can add more questions to this section, or we can completely delete this entire competency and add our own, essentially. So it's when it comes to customizing, it's everything we can think of, we can make happen on this one here. How do you feel about this section, Sanya?
Sorry, between my coughs.
I wasn't seeing you.
No,
I'm focused on the thing here. Like Crystal
no,
would
no,
say,
no.
Pat, you have the worst timing ever. I'm not
I
seeing
was
you.
like just about done, so it's good. No,
Okay.
I think you hit it right on. Like what we were saying before too, is that people have different models, right? And whether it's a consultancy that did a lot of research and came up with a specific model to say this is, what we believe is a really solid approach to leadership development, or an organization that is, building their own and feels like this is, what we want to drive internally. One of the great flexibilities of this platform is that it's completely configurable to the organization. And so we wanted to provide a foundation based on our experience and our research for areas that we think could be important, But again, at a core, what we do is we provide technology to our clients. So what we wanted to make sure is that it's very easy, no matter if somebody's using this, as a template, as a starting point, or says, you know what, this really doesn't look like something that, I'm following today. So I'd love to have my own. The idea here is to really make it your own and to make it resonate. But to do it to your point in such a way that's easy for somebody to understand, because a lot of times these platforms are used, by top executives, by people who have a million things to do. And so the last thing we want is to ask them for extra time out of their busy schedule. They know that this is important, but also, especially in the world of, B2C consumers, where there are a lot of brilliant technologies that, are retail that have made people's lives really easy, to get things done and to go through the different steps. We wanted to follow very much that same model that somebody goes in, it's tailored
Yeah.
to them, it's what drives their leaders, and they can really get it done in a heartbeat. That
Mhm.
doesn't slow down their day, but still provides all the impact and insights to the person providing the feedback on how they can get better.
Yeah, and that's key, not slowing people down in their day. So like there's a lot of little features, and the way we've built this is to save a lot of time as we're using the tool. So I won't go into the design section, but essentially at Question Pro, we love our branding, but we're not pushing our branding onto anyone. So basically, whether we're working with executive coaches or consultants or employers, you get to come up with your own colors, your own logo everywhere. You can brand this the way you want, so that's not a problem. We've got the settings section here. So we've got like general display setting. Um, I'm going to bring you right here. Like I feel like this is interesting here. So we have you can customize all the way to the relationships, right? So it's fairly standard to see, for example, these relationships on the left. So the manager, the peer, the direct report, a team member, other, and it's cool that we have those. And at the same time, it's also great if someone says, well, you know what, like I've got different relationships, I've got different wording here, I want to add my own. That's completely okay as well. So it kind of happens on the right here. You can add as many relationships as you want, and just run with this afterward. And then we have things such as setting the right anonymity threshold. And again, it's very customizable, right? So you can decide how many results have to come in for each of these relationships, so that we have access, everyone gets access to the reports basically. All right. Language wise, we already mentioned that we are a fairly global company. So for us, it was important to give access to the languages for all of our clients, because we've got clients all around the world. So we're pretty covered here. I won't go through the list, but you can see that we're pretty solid with that. So that's it for this first section here, the edit section. And I want to go straight into the distribution. So what we're seeing here is we can add many different deployments. So the way it would work, for example, for a consultant or executive coach, they could be creating different folders for each of their client, for example, each organization they're working with. And inside of these, so this is the view of one folder here. And we have like just one deployment because this is a demo environment, but you could imagine you have like all your deployments. You can use the title to name them in a way that is going to be very structured for you. So here we see that we've got this deployment that was here's the date, and then we know that it's still active. We've got 20 responses out of 25. So we've got a response rate of 80%. And so I could be adding new ones if I wanted, but for now, I'm just going to dive into this to see, okay, what's inside of this deployment. So here we've got a few things. So we see that we have 5 people, 5 subjects, right? So John, Robin, Michael, Kate, Nathan. We see their email address. We see how many evaluations they received, the status at this point. It's very easy to add new subjects inside of this deployment, or we can add more evaluators in this case. We can export participants as well. So everything is exportable when it comes to the participants, like all of the data, basically, whether it's the reports or the contacts that we have here. And then we go into the options, which I think is a really, really cool section, because it kind of shows how much flexibility we can bring here. So again, depending on how the admin is going to be using the tool, we give a lot of power to kind of like change the user experience here. So for example, what we see here is you can decide if the subject gets to self-evaluate or not, or if they can nominate their own evaluators, if they can access their reports, or if you want to control that and manage this differently a little bit, if managers can view nominations or approve evaluations. So there's a lot of information here that you can, like, whenever we basically have a client that is like, hey, can you add this thing, like this would be really relevant for us. Well, we're very responsive here, and we'll make sure that our clients get all of the settings that are needed for them to custom make the experience when it comes to the 360. What's your favorite one here, Sonia?
I know. Well, it's funny. I was like, this is like my favorite part of the platform, probably. But why it's my favorite part is because we worked with organizations, like, again, like I keep saying, there are almost as many cultures as there are organizations and that many preferences. And so we've seen companies that say, listen, like, we want these leaders to get feedback, and we're completely okay giving them autonomy to select who they want to get feedback from. They can enter in the system. We trust that, they'll send out the invitations. As soon as the results are in, they're able to, based on the, anonymity threshold, see what the results are. But that's full autonomy, full transparency. And then we
Mhm.
have clients that say, listen, we're maybe a little bit more traditional, and we'd actually like our managers to be involved in who the person who evaluates a leader, or at the very least, we want them to review and approve who this person asked to evaluate. And then when the report comes in, actually before the leader receives the report, we'd like for managers to see it and sign off on it. And so it's not our place to say, well, you should be doing this or you should be doing that. Again, what we want, the spirit of this, is for these different managers, these different leaders, to be able to get insights on how they can continue to get better.
Mhm.
And it's up to the organization how they want to run that process. So that's why, like, all of these different toggles, when Pat and I were looking at them, like, that's really like maybe even more than like a favorite one, which I might have some, is just what it speaks to. Is it, that it's a technology that will adjust to what your culture is or what your approach is, to make sure that when that information gets to the individual, they receive it in such a way that they're used to, and how the organizational culture works, and that it's not something that's like really abrupt, where it's like, wait, usually we have these different steps, and now I'm just getting this information and I need to do everything myself. Or in the opposite end, where usually we're pretty open, everyone's got autonomy to do different things, but now you're telling me that there are these 20 different steps that we have to go through, and it doesn't align with what I'm used to. It's that, like, really the alignment of empowering developing leaders to
Mhm.
what they've learned to expect and appreciate with the organization where they are.
Love it. Exactly. Yes. And when it comes to communication, very simple. We have like a lot of templates that are already out of the box, which either people get to use them or modify them and use them, or just scrap and use their own. And then they can basically create templates that they can reuse afterwards. So it makes it very easy, very simple. But you can see here the interface is fairly straightforward. So here we have a subject invite, but we can toggle to have an evaluator invite, and then we get to just see, okay, who are we sending this to? We can decide who this is coming from. If we want to adjust this here, no problem. Then we can, like I was talking about, create a new template, and we can see it here. And from there, we're good to go. And we can also set reminders, right? So evaluator reminder and a subject reminder. So to basically just improve the odds of having people respond to this, because everyone's busy. Sometimes people forget. And then we can also, which is really a cool feature, we can schedule emails in the future. So that way, I'm thinking of a fairly large deployment with many teams. And if we're staggering the dates, basically it's possible to kind of like batch all of this in one go. All of the communication is done in one shot. And then, we can just set it for the future, and we know that it's going to be sent out. Template wise, we have a lot of different templates for all of the communications that normally happen with a 360, the deployment of a 360 tool such as this one. And then again, we can add new templates. We can adjust any of those. And we've got the sent history, which I kind of like the scheduled mail. So, sometimes someone else from the team can kind of access the admin account and go there and be like, oh, okay, I can see everything that's being scheduled, everything that's being sent already. So it gives a lot of structure to the deployment, which is important when the deployments are a little bit larger than not. So that's like the admin view that we're seeing here. But I want to also show real quick like the employee portal. So this is kind of what it looks like for someone who's being evaluated here. So you can so everything is customizable. So the text that you're seeing here, this is text that you can customize. And so we see the evaluators, the evaluations. Sorry, we see the nominations, and in this case, because the option was toggled on, myself as someone who's being evaluated, I could be nominating some people that I would love to have evaluate me. And then whenever the report is ready, whether it's being generated for me automatically or not, then this would come here and I would be able to see the report. And we're going to dive into the report eventually, but like in a few minutes, basically. So that's it for this view here. If I go to report options, so that's really cool as well. So basically, as Sonia was mentioning, there's different ways of communicating the results. Here in this case, you can set up some rules so that in this specific case, we have a scenario where the subject, they can get automatically access to the reports when, and then you set up some rules. So you could say, okay, so when 5 evaluations have been completed, excluding themselves, then yes, let's let them get the report being sent to them automatically. And then you can basically turn this off, turn this on. You can basically make it based on the number of days or weeks or evaluations. So it's very flexible again in how people are experiencing the 360 tool here. Anything else you'd like to add on this part, Sonia?
No, I think I'm looking at the time, and I could add like a million things, but I think for the
Yeah.
sake of time, you did a really nice job covering it, so we can keep going.
Okay, cool. So let me dive right into, so you're doing a deployment, and you're the HR leader or you're the consultant, and you want to have like a full view. And this is one example of a report, what it looks like. And by the way, this can be configured in any way you want as well. So this is just one way of configuring it. And I'll show you right after like how you can change the configuration. But basically here, what you see is, okay, we've got a report for John here. He's surveyed himself. So, and then he had one manager basically do this for him, two peers and one direct report. And then we start diving into the data. So we have here the 8 competencies ranked from the strongest to the ones where there's the most opportunity to improve. And then we're diving into, so we've got the competencies, and then we have the behaviors. So behavior-wise, here we have just an overview of the top 5 behaviors by score, and then the lowest scores as well are here. And from there, what we have is for each competency. So for example, the inclusive leadership here, these are the behaviors that we have. And we can see basically the scores so we can slice and dice the data in so many different ways. So that's one way to look at it. And then we have this other way to look at it where, again, we've got the behaviors, and then you can see how things have been scored by themselves, by their manager, by their peers, by their direct report. And you can basically have this across all of your different competencies. So now we've got the grit and resilience, we've got the same view, and then we go to integrity. So we have this for the 8 competencies. And of course, if you were to change your competencies or change your behaviors, the reporting is going to follow that. And the way to get this done is if you go to analytics, an individual report. So what I just showed you is basically built with these blocks. We call those blocks. So you can have like your cover page, your introduction, and then you basically build those blocks so that you can get the data that you're actually looking for. Anything on that, Sonia, you want to add? You're the timekeeper at this point. I'm just
I know, it's like, Sonia, you want to keep running overtime? It's on you. No, I would just say, I think, the same thing like we've been saying with the whole system. One of the things that we get asked most about when it comes to 360 is the configurability of the report. And some of our clients will say, listen, we want to group recommendations in here's the overall, or here are your greatest strengths, here are your greatest opportunities, or here are your priorities for improvement. A lot of our clients ask for um, smart, like contextual text to say if you score a certain, below a certain number, we're going to provide this recommendation automatically, or if you score above a certain number. Basically, there are a lot of different philosophies in the way people want to communicate findings because we know, I mean, one, it's important to collect accurate information, of course. It's probably as important, if not more, in how the communication is communicated or shared back to the person being evaluated or providing feedback. So that's why we really spend a lot of time, not only in the beginning that Pat was showing in how we collect that information, but then also in configurability of the report to suit different companies or consultancy styles and how you want to deliver that in such a way that you believe will have the greatest impact and motivate and inspire the person to actually take action on the results.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And typically, like, what I love to do is whenever we're talking with someone who's like, oh, this could be interesting, we love to tailor that presentation to what it would really look like for them. And it kind of like we get to see if we're checking all the boxes when it comes to what they actually need. But it's just kind of like impossible to showcase everything in like a 10-minute. But I think, generic wise, like we're it gives a pretty good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's like what Pat and my really goal for this small amount of time that we had with you all is just to give you the high level possibility of what we built. And if it's something that's a priority for you, your organization, your business, get in touch with us. We popped in the chat where you can find us, where you can find more information on our webpage around the 360s, how you can get a hold of me and Pat. We're also, of course, on LinkedIn, so you can get a hold of us there. We provided our emails here because maybe those are a little bit more difficult to find than us on LinkedIn. But really appreciate all of your time. So glad that you joined us for this because it means that you too are thinking about leadership right now and developing managers. And so really grateful to share this time with you. And with that, I think we are on to the final portion of our X Day, which is the wellness giveaway. So Pat, thank you so much for all the insights. Thank you for the demo.
Thanks for
It
the
was
chat.
really great. And we'll see you all in the next session with a giveaway. Thank you, everybody. Thanks.